Flight 914 took off in 1955, then vanished without a trace. How does a plane just disappear? No warning, no distress call, no debris, just gone. On July 2, 1955, a Douglas DC-4, known as Flight 914, took off from New York. Its destination, Miami. The skies were clear, the weather perfect, everything seemed normal. But suddenly the plane vanished from all radar screens. No alarms, no explosions, no signals, just silence. How is that even possible? In an era before modern technology, one would expect some explanation: mechanical failure, pilot error, severe weather. But reports showed none of these factors were present. Flight 914 seemed to have simply disappeared into thin air. Witnesses on the ground recall seeing a bright flash in the sky that night. Others heard nothing. The plane never arrived in Miami. The search began immediately, but no wreckage was found. Authorities were baffled. Was it a mechanical failure, a tragic accident, or something else? A vanishing act that defied logic. Flight 914's disappearance quickly became one of the most baffling aviation mysteries of the 20th century. Official records labeled the event as a tragic loss, but no trace of the aircraft was ever recovered. Investigators found no debris, no survivors, and no distress signals. The official investigation concluded that the plane likely crashed into the Atlantic Ocean somewhere between New York and Florida. But was that the whole story? The mystery grew even stranger when decades later, rumors began to surface about Flight 914 appearing again as if lost in time. The radar that lost its target? Radars were a primary tool for tracking planes even in the 1950s. Flight 914's last radar contact was recorded somewhere near the Bermuda Triangle, an area infamous for unexplained disappearances. At 7:45 p.m., the plane was cleared to descend toward Miami International Airport, but the radar suddenly lost the signal. Air traffic controllers watched the blip disappear and never returned. Questions swirled. Had the plane entered some kind of strange anomaly? Was it sucked into a vortex? Why was there no distress signal? In every aviation disappearance, the pilots usually send an emergency call, but Flight 914's crew was silent. This silence puzzles experts. Was the crew incapacitated, or was the plane forcibly taken somewhere? The idea that a plane could just vanish with 57 people aboard sparked countless theories, some grounded in science, others fueled by conspiracy and imagination. When truth meets mystery, official records and witnesses. Official documents from the Civil Aeronautics Board confirmed the takeoff and disappearance. They also revealed that the weather was calm and the plane was fully operational. But civilian witnesses told different stories. Some claimed to see unusual lights near the plane. Others described hearing a strange hum before the radar blip vanished. Were these simply tricks of the mind, or was something else watching Flight 914 that night? The beginning of a legend. The sudden vanishing of Flight 914 planted the seed for countless stories. Could this be an early case of UFO involvement? Could Flight 914 have slipped through a tear in spacetime? These questions ignited the imagination of many, from professional investigators to amateur UFO enthusiasts. Could the plane be lost in a place where time flows differently? Could it be trapped between dimensions? What if Flight 914's disappearance was not just an accident but a door opening to something far beyond our understanding? As we dive deeper into the saga of Flight 914, prepare yourself for a journey that blurs the lines between fact and fiction, between known science and the unknown. Stay with us, because the truth about Flight 914 might be more incredible than anyone could imagine. Do you believe in time travel? Could Flight 914 have slipped through a portal? Or is there a darker secret waiting to be uncovered? The story has only just begun. Suddenly it appeared in Venezuela in 1985. Caracas Airport in chaos. A vintage DC-4 lands. The crew insists, "We're flying to Florida in 1955. How can a plane disappear for 30 years and land as if nothing happened? No rust, no aging, no explanation." It was May 21, 1985. A calm morning at Simon Bolivar International Airport, just outside Caracas, Venezuela. The control tower was monitoring routine air traffic, nothing unusual on radar. Then, out of nowhere, a signal appeared, an old transponder frequency, obsolete, one not used since the 1950s. Before the tower could even respond, the sound of roaring engines shattered the morning air. Air traffic controllers ran to the windows. What they saw made their blood run cold. A ghost from the sky. A four-engine Douglas DC-4 was descending fast. Its livery was worn, faded but unmistakably 1950s era Pan Am, the kind of plane you'd expect to find in a museum, not in active flight. The aircraft landed roughly, tires screeching, metal shaking. Emergency personnel rushed to the tarmac. The plane taxied to a halt. No radio contact, no flight plan, no clearance. And then the door opened. "Where are we?" A man in a crisp pilot uniform stepped out, holding an old clipboard. His hair was slicked back, his style decades out of place. "Where are we?" he asked, confused. "This is Caracas. Why are you speaking Spanish?" He looked around, his face pale, stunned by the unfamiliar surroundings. "I'm Captain Miguel Victor," he continued. "We were en route to Miami from New York." The control tower staff exchanged glances. One stepped forward. "What year do you think it is, Captain?" The man blinked. 1955. Panic and protocols. Security sealed off the runway. Emergency vehicles surrounded the DC-4. Airport staff ordered a lockdown. Inside the plane, 57 passengers. Men in hats and trench coats. Women in dresses. Children holding coloring books printed in black and white ink. No one had aged a day. Their watches still ticked in 1955. Not one person could explain how they got there, and not one of them believed it was 1985. "I saw clouds, then a white flash," said one woman, shaking. "Next thing I knew, we were being surrounded by people with walkie-talkies and metal badges we'd never seen." Officials in disbelief. Venezuelan authorities were stunned. Aviation experts were flown in. Photographs of the aircraft showed details accurate to 1950s models down to the rivets and wear patterns. But the fuel gauges were full. The engines were running hot as if the plane had just taken off minutes ago. Every document on board dated to 1955. The plane's logbook ended on July 2, 1955, the same day Flight 914 had vanished from radar near the Bermuda Triangle. It wasn't just similar. It was the same plane. International outrage and denial. When the U.S. Embassy was contacted, officials immediately flew in from Washington. Within hours, men in black suits arrived. They confiscated all photographs. They shut down the runway. They detained the pilot and crew for medical observation. No interviews were allowed. No news outlets could report the incident. Venezuelan journalists who tried to break the story were visited, threatened. Some vanished. But one tower controller leaked the story to a small radio station. The story spread underground, illegally. He said the pilot had repeated one phrase. "We never left 1955. Something took us, then gave us back." Witness testimonies that shook the world. Though most were silenced, a few airport workers refused to back down. A fuel technician claimed that plane was old, but it smelled brand new, like it had just left the factory. A nurse who examined a child passenger whispered his heartbeat was normal, but he was terrified. He asked me what a calculator was, and one elderly janitor who managed to keep a photo of the plane said, "I've been around aircraft my whole life. That one didn't come from the sky, it came from somewhere else." Was this time travel, or something worse? Experts were divided. Some believed Flight 914 had entered a time loop, a wormhole, and emerged 30 years later in a different place. Others argued this was a government cover-up, perhaps a failed military experiment. That a growing number of theorists, especially among the UFO community, believed the explanation was extraterrestrial. Why? Because just 2 nights before the plane reappeared, several Venezuelan villagers reported seeing strange lights above the forest near Caracas. Triangular formations, silent movement, a low hum. One farmer said, "Something landed near the ridge. We saw lights. Then it disappeared." 2 days later, Flight 914 lands. Coincidence? Project Blue Book reopened. In 1985, Project Blue Book had been closed for 16 years. Officially, the U.S. Air Force claimed it found no evidence of alien activity. But after the Caracas incident, several former Blue Book members began speaking out. One anonymous source revealed, Flight 914 was a known case inside Blue Book. It vanished near high UFO activity zones. But we were told to drop it, to let it go. Were they told to stop because the truth was too dangerous? A 30-year sleep. What happened inside the plane during those missing years? None of the passengers remembered anything unusual. To them, it was still July 2nd, 1955. But their clocks had stopped. Their skin hadn't aged. Blood tests later showed no signs of cellular aging. Had they been suspended in time? Or kept alive elsewhere? If so, by who? And why return them? If it were you, would you believe it? Imagine stepping off a plane, thinking it's 1955, only to find cars that drive themselves, computers that fit in your hand, music that sounds like alien noise. Your friends, old or dead. Your money worthless. Your world gone. Would you break down or refuse to believe it? Would you think you had gone insane? Or that the world had? So, why Venezuela? Why not back in Miami, where the flight was originally headed? Some believe the plane was intentionally diverted, as if someone or something wanted to reveal the event just enough to stir questions, but not answers. Caracas was a convenient site far from U.S. media, in a politically unstable time, easy to silence. But they didn't silence everything. The story escaped, the questions began, the files resurfaced, and now people are listening again. What really happened to Flight 914? Who or what held it for 30 years? And most chilling of all, was it the only one? Suddenly it appeared in Venezuela in 1985. From Flight 914 vanished in 1955, then landed again in 1985. A journey through time, UFOs, and a hidden truth. July 2nd, 1985. Caracas International Airport. The sun was rising lazily behind the mountains. Air traffic was normal. Nothing strange, nothing unexpected, until something impossible happened. A blip appeared on radar. Low altitude, no identification, no flight plan. The air traffic controller, Manuel Rodriguez, squinted at the green dot glowing on his screen. He reached for the radio. Unidentified aircraft. This is Caracas Tower. Identify yourself. There was a pause, static. Then, a calm, confused voice crackled through the speaker. This is Pan Am Flight 914 en route to Miami International. Estimated arrival in 57 minutes. Manuel froze. Pan Am 914. That flight number hadn't existed in decades. Say again, he replied. This is Pan Am Flight 914, DC-4 aircraft, for crew 57 passengers on board. Departed from New York on July 2, 1955. ETA Miami, 9:45 a.m. The room went silent. Colleagues stopped what they were doing. Heads turned. One technician whispered, "Is this a joke?" But the radar didn't lie. The dot was approaching, an old ghost in the sky. The control tower scrambled jets to intercept. Fighter pilots approached. They expected a drug smuggler, maybe stolen cargo, a stunt, but what they saw made their blood run cold. It was a DC-4, a model retired long ago, old Pan Am livery. The logo had faded, the metal was worn, but it flew steady, flawless. The fighter pilot, Lt. Ernesto Davila, reported, "The aircraft looks perfectly intact, like it flew straight out of the 1950s. We see passengers through the windows. They're waving, smiling. One is reading a newspaper with the date July 2nd, 1955. Panic on the ground. The control tower ordered the aircraft to land immediately. Manuel guided them to runway 5. As the plane touched down, emergency services surrounded it for trucks, military vehicles, hazmat teams. But the DC-4 taxied calmly. Its engines sputtered to a stop. The door opened. A stewardess appeared. Her uniform was spotless. Her hair, vintage 1950s curls. Her eyes terrified. Behind her, a captain stepped out, silver hair, shaking hands. His first words, "What is the meaning of this? Where are we? Is this Miami?" No one answered, because no one could believe what they were seeing. A flight lost in time. As medical teams escorted the passengers off, disbelief spread like wildfire. None of them aged a day. They were dressed in 1950s clothes. Their tickets showed the year 1955. One passenger had a newspaper, Dwight D. Eisenhower signs new interstate highway bill. Another held a watch, still ticking, still pristine. The authorities checked the flight manifest. It matched an old FAA record. Pan Am Flight 914. Departed New York, July 2, 1955. Never arrived. Declared lost over the Atlantic. Presumed crashed. All souls on board declared dead. The questions begin. What happened during those 30 years? Where did they go? Why didn't they age? No one had answers. The passengers were taken to a secure location, quarantined, interviewed. Their stories were the same. They described turbulence and silence. Then they claimed everything went dark. One stewardess, Maria Cortez, recalled, "It was like flying through clouds made of glass. Time didn't feel real. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, we were over a jungle." Another said they heard a strange humming sound just before losing contact with the outside world. And then, suddenly, Caracas. Government lockdown. The Venezuelan military seized the aircraft. Within hours, the U.S. Embassy arrived. By nightfall, men in black suits surrounded the airport. Witnesses said they didn't wear insignias. One mechanic reported they spoke English, Russian, and something else, like a code. They took the plane apart bolt by bolt. They confiscated every item, passports, bags, even napkins. And then the entire aircraft disappeared from the hangar. Gone. Vanished. Just like it had in 1955. Where did the plane go? The world didn't know, because the news was silenced. Major Venezuelan newspapers received gag orders. One brave journalist, Diego Jimenez, leaked a single photo, the DC-4 on the Caracas runway. But he vanished 3 days later. No trace. Not even a note. Radio stations that reported the story were shut down. And yet whispers spread. On UFO forums. On secret radio frequencies. On late-night conspiracy TV. Flight 914 returned, but not from our world. A timeline broken. Investigators tried to trace every passenger. Most of their families were gone. Homes demolished, children grown. One man, Peter Holloway, found out his wife had died in 1979. He broke down. Another woman's daughter was now 50 years old. She cried, "Mama, but you look exactly the same." Imagine waking up, and it's 30 years later. Your city is unrecognizable. Your money is worthless. The people you love are gone year old. Would you think it was a dream? Or were you part of something not meant to be seen? UFO, time slip, experiment. Theories exploded online. Time travel. Was the plane caught in a temporal rift? Wormhole. Did it pass through a naturally occurring portal? Alien abduction. Was the aircraft taken, studied, and returned? Top secret experiment. Was it part of a Cold War military test gone wrong? Philadelphia experiment connection. The infamous 1943 experiment allegedly made a U.S. Navy ship disappear. Could this be related? Some linked it to Project Blue Book. Others said it resembled CIA time manipulation theories from declassified documents. The truth, still locked away. A hidden timeline. What if there are other lost flights that didn't return? What if Flight 914 wasn't the only one? What if so often a hole opens in the sky, a gateway, and something or someone steps through? The pilots speak. In a leaked recording from 1992, the pilot Captain John Thompson was heard saying, "We were flying like normal. Then time cracked. That's the only way I can describe it. We were nowhere for minutes or years. I can't tell. They didn't want us to remember, but I do." When asked who they were, he went silent. The audio ends with one chilling sentence. "We weren't the first." Emotional fallout. Some passengers never recovered. They developed symptoms, memory loss, hallucinations, fear of flying. Several were admitted to psychiatric facilities. One claimed he still heard the humming every night. Another said a voice in his dreams whispers coordinates over and over. When researchers tracked those numbers, they pointed to a mountain range in Alaska, right near a classified facility. The story that won't die. Officially, the government says, there is no record of Pan Am Flight 914 arriving in Caracas in 1985, but thousands saw the plane. Dozens of Venezuelan airport staff swore it happened, and yet no physical evidence remains. No plane, no passenger list, no photos except one blurry image smuggled out by Diego Jimenez. So, we ask, did Flight 914 really return from the past, or from somewhere else? What happened during those 30 years? And more importantly, what was waiting for them on the other side? CIA UFOs and the secret files of Flight 914. Roswell to chemtrails. Is weather the new battlefield for UFO tech? From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. How far would a government go to cover up time travel? How deep does the rabbit hole really go? And what do UFOs have to do with clouds, storms, and control over the sky itself? Let's rewind the timeline. Way back, Roswell, New Mexico, July 1947. A crash, a cover-up, and a story that never really died. The U.S. Army at first claimed they had recovered a flying disc. The next day, they changed it to a weather balloon. But eyewitnesses spoke of something else. Not metal, not earthly. Debris that was lighter than air, unburnable, and impossible to bend. A military nurse describes strange bodies. Small, fragile, not human. But what does Roswell have to do with Flight 914? More than you think. The theory, a technology too advanced to be ours. After Roswell, secret projects multiplied. Project Mogul, Project Sign, Project Blue Book. But the most chilling connection, a shadow program buried inside the CIA, unofficial, off-record, known only through leaks and whistleblowers. The alleged name? Project Chronos, a hidden black project focused not just on extraterrestrial contact, but on something more dangerous, manipulating time and the environment using non-human tech. Flight 914, a test subject or a mistake. According to a declassified memo leaked in 1994, Flight 914 may have been a temporal event capture, meaning an unintentional interaction with an active spatio-temporal distortion field. In simpler terms, the plane flew into something that shouldn't have been there. Some believe this distortion was not natural, but a byproduct of Roswell technology being tested underground or above us. And now, decades later, the symptoms are showing in the skies. The sky has changed. Have you noticed? Clouds don't always look like they used to. Jet trails last longer, spread wider. Storms intensify suddenly without warning. Rain falls in places that should be dry, and droughts destroy lands that were once lush. Coincidence or control? Chemtrails, just a conspiracy or something more? Look up. Those long white lines behind planes, many say they're just contrails, condensation trails. But others argue these are chemtrails, deliberately released particles. For what? Geoengineering, weather control, mass surveillance, even population experiments. Some leaked patents suggest aluminum nanoparticles to reflect sunlight, barium compounds for electromagnetic manipulation, lithium dispersal for neurological effects. But here's where it gets chilling. These chemicals react under specific frequencies only created by very high-energy antennas, like the one in Alaska. HARP, the weapon in the sky. Built in Gakona, Alaska, the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program HARP has long been the center of weather weapon conspiracies. Officially, it's for ionospheric research. Unofficially, it's been blamed for hurricanes, earthquakes, mind control, and yes, tearing holes in the fabric of time. Sound far-fetched? Then why is it connected to the same naval contractors who worked on radar and visibility projects since the Philadelphia experiment in 1943? Why is HARP close to restricted air corridors? And why did several whistleblowers rally and scientifically under mysterious circumstances after speaking out? The UFO connection, not visitors but watchers. Here's the twist. Many sightings near HARP or chemtrail zones report not just glowing orbs or disc-shaped craft, but silent triangles hovering above storms, as if watching, as if directing. What if these crafts aren't visiting? What if they're managing us? And what if Flight 914 flew through a hollow rip in space-time created by one of these experiments? CIS secret files. Lost and Found. In 2003, A Freedom of Information Act FOIA request accidentally revealed a list of non-existent files. One line stood out. CIA File 914XR. Temporal Displacement Anomaly Civilian Aircraft Intercepted over Atlantic. Status: Contained, Repatriated. 914. September 14th, or Flight 914. The page was redacted, but conspiracy researchers connected the code to Project Pegasus, an alleged time travel research initiative using Tesla-based teleportation devices. One theory: Flight 914 passed through a portal not meant for planes, but for beings. And when it did, something followed it back. The humming sound. Passengers from Flight 914 reported a low, consistent humming during their missing time. One described it as like standing next to a power station that's alive. Another said it was like the universe itself was vibrating. Now here's the disturbing part. People who live under frequent chemtrail skies report the same sound. And during HARP tests, locals in Alaska have filed noise complaints. But when investigated, no source found, no vibration, no machines, only the hum. Weather, the new battlefield. Forget missiles, forget bullets. Control the weather and you control the world. Flood your enemy, starve them with drought, burn their forests with precision lightning, hide movements behind engineered fog, crush morale with weeks of gray, artificial rain. And if you could crack time itself, you wouldn't just win the war, you'd erase it before it began. Flight 914, a victim or a message? Was the plane caught in a test? Or was it meant to return? Were its passengers changed? Some theorists claimed they were being observed, studied. Others believe the CIA and Pentagon recovered data from the aircraft readings on spatial radiation, time compression, and biological time stasis. And now, that tech is no longer alien. It's ours. The quiet kill. Since 1985, several people linked to Flight 914 have died under strange conditions. A former stewardess collapsed while speaking at a college lecture. A passenger who wrote a book manuscript was found drowned in his dry apartment. A Venezuelan air traffic technician fell from a balcony. No witnesses. One by one, the voices are being silenced. But the truth keeps leaking. In dark corners of the internet, on shortwave radio frequencies, and in dreams of those who still remember the hum. Final thought: what if we're next? If a commercial flight could be pulled from time, if clouds could be poisoned, if the sky is no longer natural, what else is possible? What else is being hidden above us? And what will happen when the next Flight 914 doesn't come back? The final signal from Flight 914 and the 30-year silence. From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985, analyzing the last radio transmission in 1955 and the mysterious signal heard in 1985. What if the last words from Flight 914 were not the end? What if the silence that followed was not empty? And what if someone or something was listening all along? July 2nd, 19,559 to 12 a.m. It was supposed to be a routine flight. Pan Am 914, New York to Miami. Weather, clear skies. Altitude, stable. Passengers, laughing, chatting, reading the morning paper. Then at exactly 9:12 a.m. Flight 914 made contact with Miami Air Traffic Control. The radio log is simple. Pan Am 914 to Miami Tower, ETA 9:45, all systems normal. The tower responded, acknowledged. They expected no issues. But 2 minutes later, The signal broke. There was static, then something else. A low metallic hum, like dragging steel. Then a whisper hard to decipher. A single voice. The last words heard before Flight 914 vanished were, "We're not alone." And then, silence. The blackout begins. Every attempt to reestablish contact failed. No SOS. No radar trace. No crash debris. Just gone. The U.S. government launched a search across the Atlantic. Navy ships, planes, satellites. But nothing was ever found. They quietly closed the case. Declared likely crash at sea. All 61 people on board, presumed dead. The incident was locked in a classified folder until 1985 when that silence was broken. July 9th, 19,858 to 43 m. A Venezuelan amateur radio operator named Luis Morales was scanning static. It was his morning routine, a retired telecom technician, hobbyist, and ham radio nerd. But that day, his dial caught something strange. A sudden burst of sound static turning into signal. Not local, not Spanish. English. Vintage accent, faint. He adjusted the frequency, boosted gain. And what he heard made him go pale. Pan Am 914. This is Captain John Thompson, requesting clearance to land at Miami International. Luis couldn't believe it. He grabbed a tape recorder. The signal continued. Repeat. This is Pan Am 914. Coordinates sunk. We are disoriented. Where is the sun? It's been minutes, but my watch says 9:15 a.m. It was the same date, same flight, same voice. 30 years later, Luis kept the tape, hid it, told no one until the plane landed in Caracas 2 days later. Then he was never seen again. The two signals compared. In 2001, leaked CIA audio analysts' documents surfaced online. They compared the 1955 final Miami transmission with the 1985 Venezuelan ham radio recording. Same pilot, same vocal profile, same message. But one thing stood out, a background frequency. Both recordings carried an audio signature, a consistent oscillation tone. When filtered and isolated, it revealed a pattern, not natural, not static, a digital code, encrypted, layered beneath the human voice. One NSA whistleblower claimed the pattern matched an ancient mathematical sequence found in cosmic signals, the same used in SETI alien signal research. So the question arises, was someone else transmitting with them? Or through them? The missing time mystery. The flight vanished in 1955, landed in 1985, but passengers thought only minutes had passed. How? One theory, time suspension field, an experimental quantum state where all biological aging and perception are frozen while external time flows. Sounds like science fiction, not according to a leaked DARPA document from 1989 titled Temporal Containment in Civilian Aerospace Events. Lessons from the 914 anomaly. It references something even more disturbing. All biological passengers showed signs of prolonged electromagnetic exposure consistent with non-Earth-based waveform interaction. Translation. They were exposed to something human science doesn't yet understand. The silent years 1955 to 1985. Where was the plane? What realm did it enter? Here's where things get strange. In 1971, U.S. satellites picked up a brief blip in the upper ionosphere. A metallic object matching the dimensions of a DC-4 appeared for 8 seconds, hovering 110 kilometers above the Earth. Then it vanished. NASA dismissed it as debris. But in 1985, when Flight 914 landed, guess what? The same satellite recorded the same blip 3 days before the Caracas landing. Experts now believe the plane never flew back, it fell back from above. From where? A hidden dimension, a temporal fold or orbit? The voice in the echo. In 1998, a Russian deep space radio array intercepted a phantom signal during a meteor observation near Kazakhstan. The signal repeated only one phrase. "This is Pan Am Flight 914. Please don't let them take us again." The voice was Captain John Thompson. But by 1998 he had already died. Heart attack? Quiet, no autopsy. So, how was his voice still echoing in space? Was it a recording, or a residual transmission from outside time? Other flights, other signals. Pan Am 914 isn't the only one. Flight 19, the Bermuda Triangle case from 1945, pilots reported a glowing haze before vanishing. Malaysia Airlines 370, a 2014 transmission from a ground station in Perth picked up an unregistered frequency. "They are pulling us upward." 1953 Kinross incident, a military jet pursuing a UFO vanished on radar. In 1994, a Canadian ham operator claimed to receive a plea for help from that exact call sign. Are these accidents, or proof that something or someone is disrupting our skies? And is Flight 914 the only one that made it back? The forbidden frequencies. Some researchers now believe certain radio frequencies open doorways not physically, but vibrationally. That reality is layered, and tuning to the wrong frequency at the wrong time can slip a vessel into another state of being. The U.S. military classified a frequency band known as Zone 47B allegedly capable of disrupting time perception in humans. Guess what? The 1985 transmission of Flight 914 was within that band. Coincidence? Or the final key? The tape that was erased. Luis Morales' original 1985 tape recording. It was seized by Venezuelan intelligence agents working with the CIA. But before they took it, a backup copy was made. It circulated online in secret forums. And those who listened said, "There's a moment at 3:27 where you hear something else. Not human, not speech, a layered voice, deep, hollow, whispering numbers, repeating coordinates, in the Pacific Ocean near Point Nemo, the most remote place on Earth." Why? And what lies beneath those coordinates? The silence isn't empty. The 30-year silence between 1955 and 1985 wasn't just absence. It was containment, a period where a rift in space-time may have been open, monitored, maybe even used. Flight 914 wasn't just lost, it was taken, and when it returned it wasn't the same. Not the plane, not the people, not the sound. Something had changed. Something had followed. Last question. If Flight 914 made contact again after 30 years, who else is trying to reach us now? And when they do, will we understand what they're saying? Or will it already be too late? The silent mountain in Alaska, what's beneath HARP? Erased data. Why did the U.S. government hide the files on Flight 914? From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. Why are key pages missing from official reports? Why do FOIA requests about Flight 914 come back redacted or denied? And what secret could be buried deep beneath a frozen mountain in Alaska? The deeper you dig, the colder it gets. Not just literally, but politically. Every document, every attempt to uncover the truth about Flight 914. Blocked, vanished, redacted. It's as if someone erased time. not just for the plane, but for the evidence. The disappearing paper trail. In 1996, independent researcher Martin Graves filed a routine FOIA Freedom of Information Act request. He asked for any U.S. military or FAA documents related to Pan Am Flight 914, July 2, 1955, officially declared lost over the Atlantic. The reply: no records responsive to your request exist. But that was a lie. Graves had already obtained an internal FAA memo from 1962 that mentioned anomalous electromagnetic signature consistent with previous 914 radar contact loss. He submitted it again this time, attaching the memo. Weeks later, the FAA responded with a new letter. This file is restricted under National Security Act 1959B. Why would a civilian flight fall under national security? And what was 1959B? That clause doesn't appear in any public legal database. The Ghost Files of Project Blue Book. In 1969, the U.S. Air Force officially shut down Project Blue Book, its public investigation into UFOs. Over 12,000 cases had been logged, but before its closure, several reports were quietly transferred to a classified annex. A whistleblower, former USAF analyst Walter Bridgman, claimed one of those files was Case 914X, Civilian Aircraft Displacement, Atlantic Sector, July 1955. Bridgman described its contents: a flight path that ends mid-transmission, a radar image showing the plane blink off-screen, audio logs identical to the final message we revealed in Part 4, a handwritten note from a CIA operative. If true, this confirms the temporal bleed theory. File under HARP 947A. But that folder, never seen again. Destroyed or relocated to somewhere no one can reach. The mountain that doesn't speak. In the icy wilderness of Gakona, Alaska, there's a fenced-off facility. No public tours, no signs, no welcome. Its name, HARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Officially, ionospheric research, and officially, a suspected epicenter of classified weather manipulation, electromagnetic warfare, and temporal anomalies. Beneath the antennas lies a mountain, Mount Sanford, and beneath that mountain, a labyrinth of tunnels guarded by silence. No maps, no access, no answers. Erased coordinates. An ex-employee of Raytheon, a defense contractor working with HARP, leaked a strange document in 2008. It was a coordinate log tracking incident locations related to electromagnetic wave tests. One set of coordinates stood out. It matched the exact Atlantic location where Flight 914 vanished in 1955. But when researchers tried to follow up, that document disappeared from the internet within 72 hours. All backup links dead. Domain holders deleted. Even the Wayback Machine couldn't retrieve it. One line from that log, however, was screenshotted by a user before deletion. Event code 914B, signal loss. Phase 3 Alaska retrieval protocol initiated. What did Alaska have to do with the Atlantic? Was the retrieval what brought the plane back in 1985? CIA involvement hidden in plain sight. Multiple journalists tried to probe into Flight 914, but one name kept surfacing over and over. Donald Keyes, CIA field operative, assigned to Central America during the 1980s. His travel logs showed visits to both Caracas in July 1985 and Gakona, Alaska, 1 month later. His mission description: technology recovery and civilian containment, Operation Deep Fog. Operation what? The name never appears in any declassified file, but some believe Deep Fog was a covert operation to monitor, study, and erase evidence of temporal distortion incidents, including Flight 914. Disinformation campaigns. Shortly after the Crocus landing of Flight 914, a wave of media outlets began discrediting the story. Newspapers called it a hoax. TV hosts mocked it as science fiction. Experts dismissed it without investigation. But look closer. Many of those experts, later revealed to have ties to CIA-affiliated think tanks. Two radio hosts who tried to interview surviving passengers were fired the same week. One of them, Adrian Holtz, wrote this in a final blog post before disappearing. "They told me to stop. They said if I mentioned Alaska again, my family would suffer. So I'm done. But remember this. Look under the mountain." A strange power surge. On July 2, 1985, the exact day Flight 914 reemerged, the HARP facility recorded a power spike. For 7 minutes, power output tripled. This anomaly was buried in an internal log, but a technician took a photo of the readout with a disposable camera. The timestamp, 8:45 a.m. Venezuela time. Exactly when the radar in Crocus picked up the unidentified blip. Coincidence? Or proof that HARP activated a retrieval pulse? What they don't want you to know. Every FOIA request related to Flight 914 HARP anomalies or Project Chronos comes back the same. No records exist. Insufficient classification clearance. National security risk. But if it was just a missing flight, why hide the audio tapes? Why erase the pilot's logs? Why silence the passengers? Unless the government isn't just hiding what happened. They're hiding what they caused. A message from inside. In 2020, an anonymous email was sent to 5 independent researchers. It contained only one thing: a WAV audio file. When played, the sound was a low hum followed by a robotic voice reading coordinates. Those coordinates pointed to a locked underground vault beneath Mount Sanford. The voice ended with a chilling phrase: Chrono Event 914 archived, awaiting reactivation. Who sent it? What's being reactivated? And why is it still tagged active? Time isn't a straight line. Flight 914 didn't vanish. It slipped into a layer of space we don't understand. Or perhaps someone else does, and they're using it. The mountain in Alaska holds more than antennas. It holds secrets, chrono weapons, quantum fields, echoes of lost passengers, still whispering through the hum. Final thought: if governments can erase a flight, a pilot, a signal, what else have they already erased? And when the next anomaly happens, will we ever hear about it? Or will it simply be filed away and forgotten by time? Did a UFO intervene in Flight 914? From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. Eyewitness in Bermuda says, "I saw a blinding light pull an aircraft into the sky," comparing Roswell, Phoenix lights, and the impossible truth. What if Flight 914 wasn't lost but taken? What if it wasn't an accident but a mission? And what if someone or something from the sky pulled it out of time? Location: Bermuda Triangle. Date: July 2, 1955. Time: 9:18 a.m. Fisherman Jorge Alvarez was out on the water, just 30 miles off the coast of Bermuda. Clear skies, calm waters. He wasn't looking up, not at first. Then everything changed. The light. At first, I thought it was the sun, Jorge said, years later in a secret interview. But it was too white, too perfect, and it didn't move like sunlight. It came down. He pointed to the sky. Right above the clouds a glowing circular light hovered. It was completely silent, but I could feel it like pressure in my chest. And then he saw the aircraft. An old plane, low altitude, not commercial, not military. A DC-4. It was flying normally. Then the light widened and it just took the plane. In seconds, the aircraft vanished into the glow. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. The government said nothing. Jorge filed a report with local police. They laughed. 2 days later, men in suits arrived at his home. Not locals, American accents, military haircuts. They told him, "What you saw was a weather anomaly. You are not to speak about this again." When he refused, he lost his job, his boat license revoked, his family moved away. He stayed silent for 30 years, until 1985, when he saw the news from Venezuela. Flight 914 returns from the dead, and the image of the DC-4 on the runway. It was the same plane. He recognized the serial number on the tail, a pattern of lights. George's story is not isolated. Across decades, bright lights in the sky have been linked to disappearances, time distortions, and UFO activity. Let's revisit the two most famous cases. 1. Roswell, 1947. A crash. A disc-shaped craft. Witnesses described a bright flash in the sky before hearing a metallic explosion. The military collected strange debris and sealed off the area. Days later, witnesses reported memory gaps, missing time, and nausea symptoms later reported by Flight 914 passengers. Was Roswell really a crash? Or was it a retrieval mission gone wrong? What if they were testing the same light beam technology that took Flight 914? 2. Phoenix Lights, 1997. Thousands across Arizona saw massive, triangular UFOs silently move across the sky. Some saw beams of light descend. One pilot reported, "A solid object blocked out the stars, no sound, no wings, just light." Strangely, multiple amateur radio operators reported brief interference during the event. One frequency, 914 MHz. Coincidence, or a signature frequency used by these crafts? The beam, more than light. Witnesses like Jorge described the beam not just as light, but as a force. Something physical, electromagnetic, gravitational, or something we don't yet understand. In declassified Soviet research from the Cold War, scientists described directed plasma columns observed during high-altitude UFO sightings. These columns could trap ionized particles and suspend mass. Translation: they can lift objects, including planes. Flight 914's disappearance fits the pattern. Let's line up the facts. Bright light seen near the Atlantic verified by radar anomalies. Complete disappearance, no debris, no SOS, no wreck. Reappearance 30 years later in perfect condition. Passengers report a humming and weightless sensation. Witnesses confirm a craft or being present at the time of vanishing. What does that sound like? An abduction, not of a person, of an entire aircraft. Inside the light, passengers described everything going white. Some said it felt like flying through a wall made of liquid glass. One claimed, "I saw the wings bending, but we weren't crashing. We were melting into something." They heard nothing, smelled ozone, then woke up flying over Venezuela. 30 years later, to them, minutes had passed. To us, a generation. Where were they in between? The sky as a door. Modern UFO theorists suggest these crafts don't fly like planes, they jump. They create bubbles of space-time, temporary pockets where time behaves differently. The U.S. Navy's own patents filed under UFO-style propulsion describe using microwave emitters, rotating magnetic fields, plasma energy bubbles. Combine these, and you could create anti-gravity or even a time dilation zone. Flight 914 didn't fall into the past. It was pulled out of the present. Why take the plane? If these crafts are advanced civilizations, why would they take a 1950s plane to test their influence on human systems, to observe long-term biological stasis in real time, to send a message then watch how we react? Or worse, what if the passengers were not the subject? What if the plane was the Trojan horse? The warning lights? After Flight 914's return, the number of beam light sightings increased, especially near airports, near sea, near electromagnetic hubs. Some pilots reported seeing a light keeping pace with the aircraft, then disappearing. Others experienced lost time mid-flight, not hours, minutes, but that's how it starts. CIA reaction, the silent screams. When reports of the light beam incident near Bermuda resurfaced in 1985, the CIA classified all radio chatter over that region. Satellite images from 1955 declassified in 2007 show a flare in the Atlantic. The timestamp, July 2nd, 19,559 to 19 a.m. Same as George's sighting. The images were blurred, metadata wiped. Why? One more witness. In 2010, an aging Venezuelan radar technician gave one final interview. He recalled, "We picked up a slow-moving craft entering the stratosphere. Its speed changed erratically. At one point, it reversed direction instantly. That's not possible with any human aircraft." When asked what it looked like, it was light, only light, but it had mass. It distorted the radar itself and the direction. It came from Alaska. Final thought. If the light can lift a plane, if it can bend time, if it can erase memory and rewrite history, then we must ask, who controls the light? And what if Flight 914 wasn't their last test? What if it was only the beginning? Time travel theory. Where did the spatial window open? From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985, exploring wormholes, the Bermuda Triangle, and the theory of alternate dimensions. What if the laws of physics broke down mid-flight? What if Flight 914 didn't vanish but slipped? And what if somewhere in our skies windows to other worlds are still opening? It begins with a question no one can answer. Where did Flight 914 go during those 30 missing years? Not what happened, not how did it return, but where? Because to solve that we need to step beyond radar, beyond satellites, beyond logic, and into the fringe of theoretical physics. The wormhole hypothesis. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real science. Einstein-Rosen bridges, better known as wormholes, are theoretical shortcuts through spacetime. Like folding a paper and punching a hole through both ends, a wormhole connects distant points instantly. They require extreme gravitational energy, unstable spacetime geometry, exotic matter to keep them open. Sounds impossible. Not anymore. In 2020, physicists at Caltech published equations suggesting microscopic wormholes could exist and might even be naturally occurring. So the question becomes, could the skies over the Atlantic hold one of these invisible bridges? And more importantly, did Flight 914 pass through one? The Bermuda Triangle, a cosmic fault line. Let's talk about the region Flight 914 flew over. Coordinates: between Miami, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda, a region infamous for disappearing ships, vanishing planes, sudden magnetic anomalies, unexplained equipment failure. It's called the Bermuda Triangle or Devil's Triangle. But what if it's more than superstition? What if it's a natural wormhole hotspot? Strange incidents in the triangle. Flight 191945. 5 Navy bombers vanished during training. Radio logs mention, "We're entering Whitewater, everything is wrong." No wreckage found. Planes seen decades later in the clouds. As Escoto Paxi 1925. Cargo ship disappears without distress call. Reappears near Cuba in 2015, completely empty, covered in sea salt but structurally intact. Private flight N3808H 1991. Pilot radios. "My compass is spinning, I see a tunnel in the sky." Plane vanishes from radar. Debris never found. The pattern. Time slips, distorted space, electromagnetic chaos. Could these be symptoms of brief wormhole openings? Back to Flight 914. Let's retrace. 9:12 a.m. Radio contact made. 9:14 a.m. Sudden static. 9:15 a.m. Plane disappears. 1985. Plane reappears. Same condition, same passengers, same time perception. For them it had been minutes. For us 30 years. That's not teleportation. That's time dilation. Something affected the aircraft's frame of reference. According to Einstein's relativity, time slows down under massive gravity, high speed, extreme energy distortion. A wormhole would explain all three. Can wormholes move? Yes. Theoretical physicist Kip Thorne proposed that wormholes may not be fixed in space. They could drift, affected by solar flares, magnetic storms, gravitational waves. What if a wormhole opened for just a moment in 1955, right over the Atlantic? Flight 914 flew through. Then, by cosmic chance or human manipulation, it opened again in 1985 near Caracas. They didn't return. They fell out. Artificial wormholes. Here's where it gets darker. In Part 5, we discussed HARP and electromagnetic wave experiments in Alaska, but lesser known as Project Looking Glass, rumored to involve attempts to create time-viewing devices using rotating gravity fields. A 1991 leak from former Area 51 physicist Dan Burish stated, "We attempted to stabilize a spatial window, but it collapsed. The energy signature was nearly identical to the 914 anomaly file from the 50s. Another source, XD contractor David Adair, claimed that wormhole research was active in Alaska HARP, Antarctica under the ice shelf, Pacific Ocean near Point Nemo, all areas where UFO sightings are concentrated. What's the link? Non-human intelligence may have mastered stable wormholes. And now, we're trying to catch up. The missing window theory. One theory spreading among classified circles is, Flight 914 entered a natural wormhole, but someone or something on the other side kept it open. Why? To study biological response to time shifts, to test energy feedback loops across time, to send the plane back with something inside. Was Flight 914 a science experiment? Magnetic anomalies. NASA satellites recorded magnetic field disruptions in the Atlantic repeatedly traced to 27 in 71W, 24 in 65W, 22 in 70W, all points within the Flight 914 projected path. When these data spikes were reviewed, one curious thing was found. They occurred in perfect 30-year intervals. And again in 2015. Nothing happened then as far as we know. Or maybe something did. And it hasn't returned yet. Simulated models. In 2003, a Princeton team ran a simulated model of what would happen if a plane intersected a wormhole mid-flight. Result? Sudden engine failure, electrical blackout, suspension of pressure differentials, time inside the aircraft, unaffected, time outside, variable depending on the curvature. The data eerily matched reports from Flight 914 passengers. The team published their paper anonymously. It was removed within 24 hours. Are there more windows? Some researchers believe the skies are filled with temporal tears not always visible, but detectable under certain frequencies. If you tune radio signals between 900 MHz and 920 MHz, you sometimes hear humming, static pulses, distorted voices, coordinates. These bursts often occur during solar storms, earthquakes, deep-sea tectonic movements. Are wormholes Earth-connected, or are we standing on top of a planetary transit system? One final theory, not wormholes, but manipulation. Some physicists now argue wormholes are not natural at all. They are engineered, triggered by intelligent forces, whether alien, interdimensional, or future human. Someone has the key to space-time. They can open a door. They can take what they want. They can return it changed. Flight 914 was not lost. It was redirected. Final thought. If the sky hides wormholes, if the sea hides anomalies, if the air itself can bend time, then where is safe? And more terrifying, what else is already moving through these invisible windows watching us learning? And when the next window opens, will we know before it closes again? The chilling coincidence with the disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945. From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. Comparing Flight 914 to other mysterious vanishings from Flight 19 to MH370. Coincidence or cosmic design, plus a leaked confession from inside Area 51 in Dulles Base. What if Flight 914 wasn't the first or the last? What if other flights vanished the same way in the same places under the same conditions? Is it just chance or a hidden pattern in the sky? A cold echo from 1945. December 5, 1945, exactly 10 years before Flight 914 disappeared. 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers Flight 19 took off from Fort Lauderdale. Their mission, a routine training run over the Atlantic. The weather calm, the crew experienced, the route known. But something went wrong. Very wrong. The final radio message. We seem to be off course. Everything is wrong. Even the ocean looks strange. My compass is spinning. I don't know which way is west. We can't make out where we are. We may be lost in space. Then silence. All 5 planes disappeared along with a rescue aircraft sent to find them. No debris, no signal, no bodies. Sound familiar? Just like Flight 914, they vanished without a trace. Similarities between Flight 914 and Flight 19. Same region, the Atlantic corridor near the Bermuda Triangle. Same phenomena, radio distortion, compass failure, light anomalies. Same fate, sudden disappearance, no distress call. Same whispers, everything is wrong. But here's where it gets disturbing. The pattern expands. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH3702014 disappeared without warning over the South China Sea. Contact lost with air traffic control. Debris minimal, timeline inconsistent. Civilian satellites picked up an infrared light flare seconds before vanishing. One oil rig worker claimed I saw a glowing object descending fast, then nothing. Helios Airways Flight 522-2205. Lost cabin pressure. Plane flew on autopilot for hours. Passengers unresponsive, possibly frozen in time. Crash site, no clear explanation. Amelia Earhart 1937. Vanished while flying over the Pacific. Her last radio signal was echoed on shortwave frequencies for days. 1985. A bizarre radio recording surfaced of a woman repeating, "We're still here, time is wrong. The sky is cracked." Coincidence or a rule? All these flights share sudden disappearance, navigation failure, light anomalies, proximity to electromagnetic zones. Experts once dismissed it all as coincidence. Now, they call it the aerial displacement pattern, a proposed theory stating certain regions of Earth's atmosphere may open intermittently into nonlinear spacetime pockets, triggered by solar and magnetic conditions. In short, windows, just like we discussed in Part 7. And these windows may not be random. They may follow a pattern. Leaked testimony. Area 51. In 1997, a man called into a late-night radio show. Panicked, shaking. He claimed he was a former military technician from Area 51. The call was cut, but not before he said this. They're not aliens. Not exactly, they're interdimensional. They don't travel through space, they travel through phases. Flight 914 was one of theirs, a test, but we lost control of the window. When asked what happened to the passengers, they were scanned, not hurt, not at first, but they weren't alone on that plane when it came back. Later, the station lost power. The call erased from archives. But fragments of the recording still exist online. The Dulce Base connection. If Area 51 is the face, Dulce is the shadow. Located beneath Arcoleta Mesa, New Mexico, Dulce Base is rumored to be a deep underground military facility involved in genetic experiments, UFO research, dimensional gateways. In 2003, a former security officer going by the pseudonym Thomas Costello leaked internal documents. One folder, Project Traverse Flight Incursion Events Class Omega. Included were maps of electromagnetic nodes matching Flight 914 and Flight 19 routes, diagrams of temporal loops labeled with Pan-AM 914. A quote from a scientist: "We retrieved what we could, but time was contaminated." He died under mysterious circumstances 1 year later. What were they studying? If the government knows about these disappearances and has even mapped the windows, the next question: why let planes fly through? Some theories: controlled experiments to observe long-term time displacement effects on humans. Contact protocols to allow interdimensional entities access to biological samples. Reverse engineering, using data from returned crafts to build wormhole-based tech. Remember, after Flight 914 landed in 1985, its systems worked perfectly. Fuel levels untouched, instruments unaged. Yet the passengers showed strange neurological behavior, memory confusion, echoing voices, seeing figures in the clouds. Something returned. In Part 6, we asked if Flight 914 was alone inside the light. Now we know it wasn't. Post-landing medical scans revealed unidentified electromagnetic residues in the passenger's tissue. One doctor reportedly fainted after reading the brainwave activity of a child on board. It's as if she's dreaming for all of us. What does that mean? We don't know, but rumors say the child later spoke in a language no one could translate. Missing witnesses. By 1990, nearly half of the passengers from Flight 914 had disappeared, moved, relocated, or removed. One journalist tracked them to a facility in Utah under the guise of a rehab center, but surveillance showed military trucks entering the site weekly. When the journalist got too close, he vanished too. A chilling final echo. In 2019, a SETI telescope in Chile picked up a radio signal. It was brief, 3 words, distorted, repeating, but clear. Flight 19, Flight 914, flight gone. Then silence. Experts dismissed it as a glitch, but one technician noticed something odd. The signal was coming from the Pacific, the exact area Amelia Earhart vanished over. Is it all connected? Or has the loop begun again? Final thought. If Flight 914 was a test, if Flight 19 was the prototype, if MH370 was the evolution, then who is choosing the planes? Who is behind the windows? And what happens when one opens above your head? An aerospace engineer reveals, I saw documents about Flight 914 in the underground base. From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. A shocking testimony from a former Area 51 and Dulles Base insider shakes the story wide open. What if Flight 914 never truly returned? What if parts of it, evidence, passengers, or even tech, were taken underground forever? And what if someone on the inside saw everything and finally spoke out? He came forward anonymously. Codename UI, former aerospace engineer, contracted through a civilian subcontractor for the U.S. Air Force. He never meant to talk until his conscience burned a hole in his silence. A job offer from nowhere. Eli was approached in 1993 after completing a propulsion systems contract for Lockheed Martin. The offer: advanced atmospheric propulsion research, high pay, classified facility, location undisclosed, clearance Q level plus above top secret. He agreed, signed everything. Then he was flown blindfolded and sedated to a base beneath New Mexico. Its name, Section K, Lower Dose, the vault. Inside the facility, Eli worked on what he was told were black-budget propulsion experiments. But early on, something didn't sit right. The tech was too advanced. The materials weren't from any supply chain I'd ever seen. The designs didn't match known physics. Then one night, while performing a system diagnostic in an isolated research chamber, he saw a filing cabinet. Not digital, not locked, just marked Chrono Events Recovered Assets. Inside were dozens of documents. One stood out, stamped in red, Flight 914 Reacquisition, Analysis Phase 2. Inside the file, Eli couldn't believe what he was reading. Flight 914 wasn't a myth. It was real. And worse, it was under study. The contents included a debrief transcript between a survivor and a U.S. intelligence officer, analysis of material residue from the plane's fuselage, a breakdown of temporal signatures matched to an unknown energy type, notes labeled window stability fluctuation 19,551,985, predicted echo 20,152,044, and finally an internal memo. Craft returned with anomalies. Passengers show neural entrainment. Subject 914C exhibits precognitive traits. Recommend transfer to level 5 containment. Subject 914C. The name was redacted, but from the context, Eli deduced it was a young girl, likely one of the passengers. The file described altered brainwave frequencies, ability to predict short-term questions before they were asked, eyes responding to invisible infrared, occasional utterances in unknown phonetic clusters. In other words, she changed, or something was now living through her. The interviews. The most disturbing part, the debriefs. One interview transcript between a military psych officer and the pilot of Flight 914 was chilling. Interviewer: "Where were you, Captain?" Pilot: "I don't know. It was quiet and endless." Interviewer: "What do you remember before you reappeared?" Pilot: "A hum, like metal vibrating through my bones. Then a voice." Interviewer: "A voice." Pilot: "It said, 'You returned, but not alone.'" The rest of the transcript was blacked out. "They're not watching us, they're studying the echo." Eli recalled a phrase repeated often in the Dulce briefing rooms. "Chrono echo disturbance detected." He asked his superior what it meant. The reply: "Time has memory. When something leaves unnaturally, the gap echoes forward and backward." Flight 914 left a tear. That tear never closed. Some believed the reappearance of the plane wasn't planned. It was a ripple effect caused by energy surges the government didn't fully understand or control. The missing crew. Eli later learned that only 29 of the original 57 passengers were returned. The official story: some died during temporal dislocation. But a handwritten note in the file contradicted that. Subjects 914 Alpha through Zulu were assigned to Subterranean Analysis Protocol, non-public. Translation: they were taken underground. For what? Experiments. Quarantine communication. The propulsion system, not built by us. Eli also worked on dismantling a piece of unknown technology recovered from Flight 914. It was installed after the plane vanished but before it returned. The part: a black, pulsating coil embedded near the rear turbine. It wasn't wired into the original engine. It sat above it floating, partially embedded in the frame like glass melted into steel. No screws. No welds. Just fused. Tests showed no radiation. No heat signature. No known alloy. But magnetic pulses timed exactly 0.914 seconds apart. Was it marking time, stabilizing a window, or guiding the plane back? Project Skylatch. In another folder, Eli saw the name of the overarching program: Skylatch, an ultra-black project reportedly launched in the 1950s, allegedly in response to Roswell debris, Flight 19, and early electromagnetic anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle. Its purpose: monitor non-terrestrial atmospheric incursions and attempt retrieval of chrono assets via phased exposure loops. One slide described Flight 914 as a successful mid-phase exposure event. Another showed a timeline with red dots marking known aviation disappearances. But the final dot was blank, labeled Next Acquisition, TBD Vector 914 Realignment 20382044 window projected. Why Eli came forward. He was never supposed to see those files. But once he did, he couldn't unsee them. He worked there for more years, then quietly left. No one stopped him. No one followed in. But he lived the rest of his life watching the sky, listening to static, reading names in the news and wondering which flight would vanish next. Final thought: Flight 914 didn't just disappear. It became a military asset. Its passengers became subjects. Its mystery became a blueprint. And somewhere beneath the deserts of New Mexico, the files still exist, the devices still hum, and the name 914 is still circled on black project boards. Because whatever took that plane might be coming back, and this time it may not return anything at all. Passengers recall, we flew through a white light, then everything disappeared. From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. Inside the minds of those who lived the impossible, the frozen moment where time stood still. What does it feel like to fly through a wall of light, to have reality dissolve like a dream slipping away, and to wake up decades later with nothing but memories of a frozen moment? The testimonies are rare, almost suppressed, but some passengers spoke in whispers, fragments, and broken senses. Their stories are haunting, poetic, and terrifyingly real. The white light. Passenger Sarah Langley was 14 years old when Flight 914 vanished. In a rare interview decades later, she said, "We were cruising at 18,000 feet. The sky was clear and then, suddenly, the light appeared." She described it as a blinding white sphere larger than the plane, so intense it filled every window. It wasn't just light, it was everything. At first, I thought it was the sun, but it was cold, like ice, and sound disappeared. Other passengers described the same phenomenon. Time freezes. Michael Torres, the co-pilot, gave a statement years later. The instruments froze. The clock stopped. The air felt heavy, yet weightless. He said the plane felt like it was caught in molasses but moving forward. My watch was dead. No ticking, nothing. But I could hear my heart beat loud as thunder. Passengers reported clocks stopping mid-tick, lights dimming then returning, a buzzing sensation in their ears, like electricity or static. One woman said, "It felt like we were underwater, like trapped in a bubble where time had paused." The dream state. Most chilling were descriptions of the mental state during the white light passage. Passengers said it was like floating between waking and sleeping, moving through a dreamscape, seeing distorted shadows and colors, hearing faint whispers in an unknown language. Sarah said, "I felt like I was dreaming, but more real than anything I'd known. It was peaceful and terrifying." One passenger sketched a strange symbol they claimed to have seen on the light. The symbol resembled a circle with intersecting lines similar to ancient glyphs found in Peru and Egypt. Was it a warning? A signature? Lost moments. Several passengers reported missing time. When the light vanished, they found the clocks had jumped 30 years. To them, only minutes had passed. To the outside world, a generation. The silence after. When Flight 914 reappeared in Caracas, something was different. Passengers were disoriented, forgetful, struggling to communicate. Doctors noted elevated heart rates, unexplained neurological symptoms. Some even had temporary blindness for days. One nurse recorded a passenger muttering, "The light watches us back. We are shadows now." The voice in the silence. A recurring phenomenon was hearing a voice. Some passengers heard a calm, distant voice, sometimes male, sometimes female, speaking in a language no one recognized. Michael recalled, "It wasn't words, more like meaning in sounds, like it was inside my head." The voice never answered questions. It only said, "You have passed, you are safe, but you are changed." The physics of the moment. Scientists who later studied Flight 914's passenger reports proposed the white light was a temporal interface, a boundary between normal time and an altered dimension. The brain experienced sensory overload, causing hallucinations and dreamlike states. The weightlessness and silence were signs of space-time distortion. In effect, passengers were caught in a time bubble, a moment frozen yet flowing. The aftermath. Changed forever. Decades later, many passengers still suffer sleep disturbances, sudden flashes of light in their dreams, vivid memories of the white light and the voice. Some formed groups to share their experiences, called the 914 Collective. They believe we were not lost, we were taken somewhere else, and part of us never left. The final question: if the white light was a portal, if time froze for those inside, if their minds drifted into another realm, what are they now? Are they still human, or echoes of a moment lost to time? What Flight 914's crew couldn't explain. From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. The logbook, the compass, the voices, and the things the pilot refused to put in writing. What happens when even the crew can't explain what they lived through? What do you write in a logbook when time disappears? What do you say when your own memory betrays you? For decades, Captain Miguel Victor Delgado said nothing. Neither did his co-pilot, Michael Torres, until one interview. Just one. Then both went silent again. What they said still echoes in military transcripts and whispers from Caracas to Langley. Let's dive into what Flight 914's crew couldn't explain and what they refused to say out loud. The pilot's logbook, a time capsule of the impossible. Recovered from the cockpit after landing in 1985, the captain's logbook was the first thing the ground team secured. It was still open mid-sentence. Last entry before vanishing in 1955. Cruising altitude 18,000 feet. Clear skies. Miami Tower reports no incoming traffic. ETA Florida, 9:45 a.m. Then blank. No ink smear. No ripped page. Just emptiness, as if time itself hit pause. Then, decades later, on a back page never meant for official entries, someone Captain Delgado presumed had written, "We passed through the eye, everything stopped, something washed." That was it. No explanation, no details, just those 9 chilling words. Instruments that made no sense. When engineers examined the plane's equipment, they found things that shouldn't exist. The fuel gauge still showed 1955 levels. The chronometer inside the cockpit had stopped, then jumped ahead 30 years. The plane's transponder sent out a signal never used in civil aviation. When asked, co-pilot Torres said, "We didn't install anything. That signal was already there." What was broadcasting? From where? And why did it pulse every 9.14 seconds? The radio call that no one can verify. On the day the plane reappeared, Venezuelan air traffic control received a garbled transmission. It sounded like an older radio frequency used in the 1950s. The voice said, "Panam 914 requesting clearance en route to Florida. We are low on time." Time. Not fuel. Not altitude. Time. When asked later if he made the call, Captain Delgado went pale. "I thought they were calling us." They. He never clarified. The crew's condition. All 3 crew members were medically examined. Physically fine. No signs of aging. No illness. Pulse, blood pressure, vision normal. But EEG scans told a different story. Each showed intermittent brainwave surges, as if their minds were briefly sensing to a frequency not of this earth. One neurologist's note read, "They respond to audio cues outside the human hearing range. Frequencies between 32 and 34 kHz seem to stimulate deep memory recall." Why would a commercial airline pilot's brain respond to ultrasonic patterns? Unless they were exposed to a system not built for humans. What the captain refused to say. During his interview with Pentagon officials in 1986, Captain Delgado was asked, "What's the last thing you remember before reappearing?" He was silent for nearly 10 minutes. Then he whispered, "There was a door, but not a door like on Earth. It opened in the sky." and we were not supposed to see what was behind it. He refused to elaborate. The crew shared vision. Co-pilot Torres later confessed something even stranger. All three crew members claimed to have the same dream every night since the flight reappeared. In the dream, they're still flying. The sky is white. A figure made of light stands on the wing, and it says, "You are not the first. You will not be the last." Each described the exact same figure, same pose, same message. Different nights, different places, same dream. The compass that spun for 3 days. Among the plane's artifacts, one item stunned the team. The captain's magnetic compass. From the moment it was removed from the cockpit, it began spinning wildly, non-stop. It didn't stabilize for 3 days. Scientists tried, isolating it from magnetic fields, placing it in vacuum chambers, freezing it, heating it. Nothing stopped it. Then without warning it froze, pointing true north. Except they were in a south-facing room. No known field explained it. When shown the video, Delgado turned away and muttered, "It's still connected. It remembers." Strange codes on the altimeter. Another oddity. The altimeter on Flight 914 had a series of etched marks not part of its original design. Not numbers, not letters, symbols. They matched no aviation standard. But when fed into a code analysis tool by a retired NSA linguist, it translated into shift zone, open witness safe return flag. Flagged. By whom? And why? The final entry in the co-pilot's journal. Torres kept a personal notebook. Most entries were technical flight logs, schedules, fuel tracking. But the final page was written in a different hand, almost frantic. It read, "If you find this, tell my family I came back. But I'm not alone. I still hear them. They're waiting for the sky to open again." What the crew agreed never to speak about. A declassified document from a CIA archive in 2003 referenced a crew pact. It said, Flight 914's pilots were instructed to remain silent on certain anomalies. They were also warned, should they share the event's full nature, their return status may be challenged. Translation: if they talked, their lives could be erased, and maybe time would erase them too. One more mystery. A photo that shouldn't exist. A photo was recovered from a passenger's camera. It had survived in pristine condition. It showed the interior of the plane, mid-flight, but something was wrong. Outside the window, instead of clouds, a perfect black circle surrounded by a white halo. Experts verified, not a camera glitch, not a reflection, not Earth's sun, a portal, a surveillance craft, or the eye the captain wrote about. Final thought. The logbook stopped. The compass spun. The clocks reset. But the memories did not fade. What did the crew really see inside that white light? What followed them back? And what waits, quietly, for the sky to shift once again? The government's final move. Why were all reports about Flight 914 sealed in 1992? From the viral series, Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. The moment the cover-up became official, and the truth was locked away forever, or so they thought. Why would a government bury a story that should be celebrated? Why turn a miracle flight into a classified threat? What did they discover that made them silence it all in 1992? The vanishing trail. At first, it was in every paper. Plane lost in 1955 reappears in Venezuela. Passengers unaged after 30 years. Pan Am 914 mystery deepens. News outlets couldn't get enough. But by 1987 the coverage faded. By 1990 silence. By 1992 complete erasure. Every file, Every report, every name, sealed. The 1992 directive. The official name, Directive Sigmax 1-2, issued March 11, 1992, signed by then Secretary of Defense. It stated, all documents, media, and witness testimony related to Flight 914 are hereby designated ultra-black under National Security Clause 8.2. The reason? To preserve psychological stability and prevent mass disruption due to unexplained aerospace phenomena. Translation: the truth was too big, too strange, too uncontrollable, and too connected to other things. Who ordered it? Some say it was pressure from the CIA. Others blame DARPA, NASA, or even Majestic 12, the rumored ultra-secret group overseeing UFO tech. But a leaked memo from 1991 shows something chilling. A Pentagon official wrote, the re-entry of Flight 914 is not an isolated event. It's part of a pattern, one we no longer influence. The passengers are not the only ones who returned. That memo was never meant for public eyes. But it reached them anyway. The disappearance of evidence. Shortly after the directive, the plane was moved from a Venezuelan hangar to a classified site in Nevada. Passengers were relocated, one by one, to unknown medical facilities. The airport staff who saw the plane land, reassigned, silenced. Journalists who followed the story discredited. The radio tower logs, deleted. Even the flight manifest was erased from Pan Am's archives. One technician at the National Archives said, it's like someone went in and scrubbed the memory of an entire airline. The redacted pages. A Freedom of Information Act request was filed in 1995. It asked for the Flight 914 investigation summary, medical reports of the returned passengers, audio from the Caracas Tower on the day of landing, all communication logs from Langley and NORAD. What did the requester receive? 3 blacked-out pages. Just one phrase visible at the top. Access denied, classified above, top secret, unauthorized inquiry flagged. Flagged by who? Unknown. The hidden file number, 914ECHO. A hacker known as NetSpectre broke into an unsecured U.S. Air Force server in 2007. They found a file titled 914ECHO, Date Response Evaluation. Inside were fragments. Keywords only. Event loop. Passenger interference pattern. Psychogenic echo waves. Witness neutralization tier 2. Predicted reemergence 2036 to 2040. What's gate response? Why interference pattern? And what does reemergence mean? Is something coming again? A pattern of silence. Flight 914 is not alone. Files about Roswell 1947, Kecksburg 1965, Phoenix Lights 1997, and H370214 have all been sealed under similar directives. Each time, civilian witnesses discredited, radar data vanished, military presence increased, weather balloons or technical glitches blamed. Each time, silence won. Until now, the psychological threat excuse. Governments claim disclosure could cause mass panic, breakdown of religious or scientific belief, loss of trust in air travel, temporal instability, contagion, a term still not fully explained. One former intelligence officer later confessed, it wasn't just fear of public reaction, it was fear of the truth because we didn't have answers. What were they protecting? By sealing the files, the government protected technological secrets found on the plane, patterns of time disruption, evidence of interdimensional contact, the location of what they called the second gate, Rumors say it's buried beneath a mountain in Alaska. Others point to deep-sea coordinates near the Puerto Rico Trench. And then there's the timeline issue, the timeline anomaly. Multiple agencies reported discrepancies in the astronomical time codes embedded in Flight 914's navigation equipment. One internal memo said, "Stellar drift gate aligns not with 1955 or 1985, but another Earth position entirely," as if the plane didn't return from a different time. It returned from a different version of Earth. One final message. Before all communication about Flight 914 was shut down, one anonymous letter was sent to a researcher, typed, "No return address." It read, "You're looking for the truth about Flight 914. But truth isn't the question. The real question, what followed them back? And how long can we keep it here?" Final thought. Why was everything sealed in 1992? Maybe because Flight 914 didn't just return. It changed something. Reality bent. Time looped. The rules shattered. And the only way to keep the illusion alive was to bury the truth with it. But the cracks are showing. And if even one window opens again, they won't be able to seal it next time. The timeline is breaking. Will Flight 914 happen again? The finale of the viral series. Flight 914 disappeared in 1955, landed again in 1985. One question remains, was this a wartime event or the beginning of something bigger? What if Flight 914 was never an accident? What if it was a test or worse, a signal? And what if that same rip in time is starting to open again? For decades, Flight 914 was dismissed as an urban legend. Then it was erased. Now, it's re-emerging, but not in the way you think. Because time isn't stable anymore. The timeline anomalies begin. In the early 2000s, strange reports started surfacing. Pilots in the North Atlantic reporting sudden instrument failures near the same coordinates. Flight 914 vanished. Civilian airliners hearing ghost radio signals. Pan Am 914 requesting clearance. Radar flashes quick, impossible blips moving at 1950 speed, following outdated flight paths. Air traffic towers receiving calls from flights that don't exist. And then the most disturbing case, the Phantom Passenger 2011. A security camera at JFK Airport captured a man walking into Terminal 3. He was disoriented, dressed in 1950s Pan Am staff uniform. He asked, "Has Flight 914 departed yet? I'm late for my shift." Security detained him. No ID, no fingerprints in the system. But he had a badge rusted, faded, marked P. Alderson, Pan Am FLT 914 crew. He was taken to a private facility, then disappeared. Records erased, terminal footage scrubbed. But a whistleblower leaked a single sentence from his interrogation transcript. The window opened again. "I came through. Cracks in time." A physicist from CERN, who later died in an accident, wrote in his final blog, "There are spikes not just in energy but in temporal pressure. Patterns are repeating. 1955 is leaking. Something is pushing from the outside." He included a chart. The peaks: 1,955,198,520,152,045, all spaced 30 years apart, all showing increased energy distortion near specific global locations. The coordinates no one can explain, recovered from Flight 914's modified altimeter. 934 and 6,850 W. That location, a quiet patch of ocean off the Venezuelan coast. Now, it's classified, but satellites have picked up electromagnetic pulses there every 9.14 days. Exactly. Each pulse is preceded by a radar anomaly, a spike in extremely low frequency waves, a brief, sharp drop in gravitational readings. It's as if something is trying to open again. Witnesses today echoes of the past. 2022 Caribbean. A fisherman swore he saw a ghost plane in the sky, slow, silver, with propellers. It shimmered, like it was made of fog and glass, then vanished. 2023 Bermuda Triangle. A private pilot lost contact for 7 minutes. When he reconnected, he said, "I wasn't alone. Something flew beside me. No wings, no sound, just light." And just this year, 2025, a transatlantic flight experienced a 9-minute blackout. After landing, 5 passengers reported a dream, the exact same dream. "We were on a plane. The sky turned white. A door opened in the clouds. And something said, 914 was the first. You are next." Government reaction. Project Timony. Leaked documents reveal a new initiative. Project Timony. Purpose: monitor and neutralize airborne temporal breaches. Prevent unauthorized re-entries from prior windows. Launched in 2024. Backed by Space Force and DARPA. Main facility, Greenland. One line in the report stands out. The 914 event cannot happen again. If it does, containment will fail. Why 914 still matters. It's not just about a plane. It's about a pattern. A rip in time, not space. A code 9.1 for repeated impulse intervals, signal bursts, and even brainwave scans. A timeline that's showing signs of stress. 914 was the start, but something bigger is coming. One final clue. In 2025, a child born to one of the original 914 passengers began drawing complex shapes. One sketch matches ancient Sumerian time glyphs. Another, a portal with a silver plane inside. She said, "Daddy hears them when he sleeps. They say he left a piece behind. It's opening again." The warning: Flight 914 was a test, not by humans, not by weather, but by something that sees time differently. And now the question is not if it will happen again. The question is, will we be ready this time? Or will another plane in another year vanish and return when it's far too late? Final message. The timeline is bending. The echoes are growing. And Flight 914 was only the beginning.